Welcome to the Michigan State Hockey Hub. As this weekend, we're going to give a little bit of a recap of the GLI, and then we're going to preview Minnesota. And this week's guest is Alex Faber. Alex Faber, he covers Michigan State. I'll let him talk about all of it. But for the state news, Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. So why don't you tell everyone exactly what you do, what you cover, your Red Wings coverage as well, because I'm sure people will be interested in that.
Yes, so I'm a student at Michigan State University. Last semester, I started writing about the Red Wings for a fan-sided blog, Octopus Thrower. Just kind of in-depth analysis of like stats of players, of prospects. And then after that, I kind of got really into hockey, diving into the, like I said, the statistics, the deeper side of the game. Then I ended up applying at the State News. Worked at the culture desk for a bit, but eventually made my way to sports. And then I got the beat job for the hockey team this year. So it's been really fun heading to every home game and kind of just covering the team, following along with them.
So is this your first season with hockey?
Yes. Yep. I've long time viewer, of course, but like first time writing and covering it. Yep.
Yeah. So where are you from, and how did you get started, I guess, being a fan of MSU and the hockey team?
Yeah, so I'm from Mount Pleasant, Michigan. I lived in Lansing for a bit, but Mount Pleasant's my hometown. Went to community college here, and then I went to Michigan State University. I've been a fan of the MSU hockey team for a while, so that was kind of the weird thing when I started covering the team was like talking to guys like Danton Cole and especially Mitchell Lewandowski, like a couple of guys that I followed for a bit. If Taro Hirose would have still been there, I would have loved that. But yeah, just I've always loved the university, and to kind of go there and cover the team that I had followed for so long, it's kind of unreal. I don't know.
Yeah, so Taro Hirose is one of my favorite players to watch, and he's tearing it up in the A. I mean, he's doing well. Why is he not getting a shot with the Red Wings? Is it just simply they have so much young talent that they have other guys to prioritize, or maybe a little bit younger, or have a little bit higher upside?
I don't really get it. Last year he got a bit of exposure because of that he was on the taxi squad a lot with COVID, and he had a few starts and he looked good, especially on the power play on a terrible power play unit. He's a good playmaker. He's not a great goal scorer, but I mean, he can make plays. He can make slick passes. He can drive offense into the offensive zone. I don't really have an explanation. I don't know if he's leading the team in points in Grand Rapids. I think he's probably behind Riley Barber, but he's right up there. I honestly couldn't explain it. There's not a lot of super talented wingers in Detroit right now. Like 36 or 37-year-old Carter Rowney's getting a start over him. So it's not even like a youth thing. I don't get it. I have a signed hockey puck from Tar. Like I love this guy. I wish the Wings were giving him a chance. I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, before we get started, do you have a favorite Michigan State hockey player? Is it Hirose?
It is Hirose. Yep, I love him.
He's up there. Him and Joe Cox. Like, I was a huge Joe Cox fan. He was just like all out. I mean, I loved him, and he put together a little bit of a pro career. He didn't make it to the NHL, but played really well in Montreal's system. But we'll jump into the GLI. So in the GLI, Michigan State on last Wednesday played Western Michigan, lost 3-1, and played Michigan Tech on Thursday, won 3-2. I think we can both agree the player of the weekend had to have been David Gucciardi or Drew DeRitter. Both were fantastic. Now, Western Michigan's really good. Top 5 team when we played them. I think they're around 4. I think they're at 3 right now. And Michigan Tech is a tournament kind of on the outside looking in type. Maybe they get in. Still a top 20 team, rated 20 right now as of today, even after the overtime loss. What were your takeaways from the GLI, and what all did you kind of see from those 2 games?
So you mentioned DeRitter. that was the least surprising thing of the tournament.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear that DeRitter powered a team, or when I see a game, and it's just the least surprising thing in the world when he steps up. What did surprise me was David. I've been pretty high on David all season. I mentioned him in Brad LaPlante's podcast a couple weeks ago, how he's one of those defensemen I've really liked. He usually gets like a second or third pairing role, but he's got speed. He has really nice hands for a defenseman. And he finally kind of had his coming out series. 3 of Michigan State's 4 goals on the weekend were freshman defenseman David Gucciardi. Yeah. I mean, that was just a shocking performance. And his overtime winner against Michigan Tech made the Sports Center top 10.
Yeah,
that was just incredible. That is the main thing that sticks out to me. And like you said, against Western, a very talented team fighting to the end, and there were just plenty of opportunities for them to take that game too. Nico Mueller's missed penalty shot comes to mind.
Yep. So yeah, and that was a 2-1 game, more or less. Until the very, very end there. Mueller, for those who do not know, was tripped up at center ice on the penalty kill. And honestly, I was at the game, and part of me was like, I know a penalty shot is a really good chance to score, but I honestly would not mind if they just go to the power play here, or go 4-on-4, because I love Mueller, and I think he's been awesome. He's not much of an offensive threat. He thinks the game well, but he's a great defensive player, and I think he has really improved throughout the year. But yeah, David Gucciardi is a freshman. He does not play like it. He's playing like a junior or senior out there, and you know what I like about him is he's not afraid to shoot the puck. Sometimes you get a D-man, especially a freshman, who's going to look to distribute more, or not take the shot all the time. He's looking to shoot, and I think this ceiling is super high for him. But yeah, overall, I think it was a good, I guess you can call it a split. It goes in as so that overtime, it goes down as a win, right? But does it go for a tie or a loss for Michigan Tech?
I think it goes in as a. It's so weird in college hockey because don't know how
it's not the same conference and they have different rules. I don't know. A Michigan Tech guy was telling me, he's like, "Oh yeah, well it's a tie," and I was like, "Oh okay, I don't." All right, sorry.
It might go down as a tie. It might go down as technically a tie for them. Like in the
I don't care.
Standings.
I don't care. Munn, it's a win at Munn that night, and I do want to say the Western Michigan fans are really, really nice, great fans. In Michigan Tech, I mean, I hate to say it, they brought a crew down there. Isn't it like 7 or 8 hour drive or something ridiculous?
Yeah, it's Houghton, which is right at the top of the Keweenaw, like in the Upper Peninsula.
I was blown away how many fans they had, and they were chanting during the game. And now granted, MSU, the students were on holiday break. The bowl game was that night, so I actually went from the Michigan State game, where I saw the overtime winner, hustled back to my hotel, the Graduate Hotel, the new hotel by Harper's, fantastic hotel. It's if anyone has not been there, as a rooftop bar or coffee shop, really cool. Free advertisement for them there. And I watched the MSU football game. It was a hell of a night, but so that's a great weekend. But as we head into this weekend against Minnesota, this is going to be a tough task. However, Minnesota's ranked well, but they're 10-8, and I don't think they're as good as people had projected them to be, and we'll talk about why later. But before we get into Minnesota, I'm jumping the gun a little bit. Let's go ahead and talk about the Big Ten standings. Right now, you're looking at first place Michigan, 23 points. Second place, Minnesota, 19 points. Third place, Ohio State with 18 points. Fourth, Notre Dame, 17 points. Fifth, Michigan State with 14 points. Wisconsin with 9. Penn State with 8. So right now, MSU's been pretty much used to being at the bottom, or it was almost a celebration if they were not in last place the past few years. However, they look much better this year. And part of that is Drew DeRitter, which I always forget to mention him as like player of the game or whatever, because it's become such a standard at this point. Like, oh, 40 save shutout, or he saves 40 or 41 or something. It's like, oh yeah, that's a typical game. It's unbelievable. And truly, he's one of the special athletes that we've had at MSU in the past couple of years, and it kind of goes unnoticed. He just doesn't get the pub that other sports do. So that's why we're here. We're here to make sure everyone knows how great Drew DeRitter is. But right now, I mean, it's a big opportunity that this weekend with MSU at 14 points. They could climb up and climb these standings, depending on how everything else works. But what have you seen around the Big Ten so far? Who's standing out to you? Who's kind of slumping?
So I mean, as much as I hate to say it, I have to give it to Michigan. Like, they have to be the favorites right now with that much talent, and the fact that they're leading 23 points. They're such an excellent squad that it's hard for me to really say someone's going to dethrone them. But I think what's interesting here is going to be the battle for home ice in the Big Ten, in the Big Ten tournament, that is. And I think that's where like weekends like this come really big in for Michigan State. They're right up there with that 14 points. They're still right in the mix there. They're right near the middle. They're just below Notre Dame. They're just below Ohio State. They might not be vying for a Big Ten title. I think that would be, that's a little silly. But they could very well make a push to end up playing at Munn for one of these Big Ten games, which I think would be an accomplishment in and of itself, based on what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, and those who do not know, Michigan State has not won a Big Ten hockey tournament game ever. So if you can talk about getting a home ice advantage, I mean, it's small steps. They're not going to go from one of the worst teams in the Big Ten to the best. This is a big improvement. Now, I say that, and their record looks good. They're playing much better, and their stats are so much better than last year. They still have a lot to do ahead of them. There's a lot of good teams that they have to play, including 4 against Minnesota, who we'll go ahead and talk about. Now, Minnesota, they're ranked number 9 and number 11 in the pairwise. They have wins against St. Cloud State, Michigan, North Dakota, but they also have losses against St. Cloud State. They split that. Wisconsin, a split. Ohio State, they split. Penn State, they split. North Dakota, they split. Michigan split, and they were swept by Minnesota Duluth. So really, I mean, this is a good team, and they have a lot of offensive talent. And they always do, right? They always have NHL caliber players on their team. It usually comes down to their goaltending, which we'll get into. But Minnesota so far, what do you think of them?
So it's kind of difficult because 10-8, that's not really what you associate with Minnesota hockey. It's a little just about above average, like upon just initial viewing. But once you start digging into those games, you start to see why. Like they've played such a high caliber amount of games. Dan Cole talks about all the time about how every Big Ten series is essentially a playoff series. The same is true for Minnesota. They played essentially playoff series in addition to non-conference powerhouses like St. Cloud, North Dakota, Duluth. Like nearly every series they've played have been tournament caliber teams that can beat them every day of the week. And the fact that they're still 10-8 right now, it's still a dangerous team. I think Minnesota, well, maybe not up to the standards that typically Minnesota hockey should probably be at. They're still an excellent program, and this year they've captured a few of those great wins there. Like you said, wins against St. Cloud, wins against Michigan, wins against North Dakota.
Yeah, and they have a lot of offensive talent. They really do. Ben Myers, I don't know what year he is, but for some reason he just seems like someone who's been there forever. I don't know why.
He's their captain as well. He's a killer.
He drives offense. He sets up plays. If you watch any of their games, he's just a high IQ player with the puck on his stick.
Yep.
Blake McLaughlin is similar. He's kind of like the way he is exactly what I want Tanner Kelly to become. I think he has more offensive skill than Tanner
That's a
Kelly,
good
but
comp.
they're both, gritty, going to be on top of you, pestering players. And then, Sammy Walker is a guy who probably a lot of people know his name. He can put the puck in the back of the net. And Bryce Brodzinski is, I mean, this kid is dangerous with the puck, and he can dangle around just about anybody and make you look foolish. And he leads the team with 9 goals. What do you
Brzezinski
think?
and McLaughlin, they have some lethal chemistry together.
Yeah.
I mean, McLaughlin, it seems like his goal is to get the puck on his stick, and it usually works out, as we've seen from Bryce's 9 goals. Like that, that's a lethal duo.
Yeah, I don't remember who they were playing this year. As I was kind of watching some of their games and their highlights and whatnot, preparing for this, he had the most ridiculous goal, like you just don't see college players making, where he's just like dangling right in front of the goalie, going past 2 defenders, and then he had patience, which a lot of players struggle with, and held the puck and held like I kind of compare what he did to like Patrick Kane, when you're like shoot, shoot, shoot. Oh my God, why is he not shooting in the puck? And he's just smarter than you. And he's just
That
holding it
lethal
longer than you,
patience.
and he's just waiting you out until the goalie makes one move that, and boom, back of the net. So yeah, they definitely have a lethal combination of offensive talent.
Well, and even Chaz Lucius,
Yeah.
guy on their second line, he hasn't been really scoring as much as I thought he would be. He was a first-round draft pick in the NHL, but that dude is lethal. He's a freshman. He has 5 goals and 3 assists so far. Not really super impressive in terms of just like looking at the stat sheet, but he's been playing as a winger this year. He's used to being a center. This is a kind of guy who could pop off at any moment. So he's not one of the leading scorers for the Gophers, but he just terrifies me anytime he has the puck on his stick. Because I mean, he showed it with the U.S. national development team last year. That dude can find the back of the net at any point.
Yeah, they definitely have no shortage. When with MSU, they're, I wouldn't say like completely top heavy, but they're, they lack secondary scoring, and they lack
Yeah.
multiple playmakers. As we saw when Lewandowski was out, I mean, that team looked totally different. They need
You could
him.
see the offense struggle without him as that playmaker. They just
Minnesota has a couple of Lewandowski level talents, and even more talented than Lewandowski. So it's definitely going to be a challenge. We'll get into keys of the game and what we see later, but let's jump into their special teams right now. The power play clicking at 25%, penalty kill 82.4. So the penalty kill, probably they'd like it to be a little bit better. It's not miserable or, a huge red flag or anything, but that power play, it's what you get when they are always good on the power play every year.
Yep. When you're that consistently good, it has to be somewhat coaching. But like we were talking about earlier, with the amount of playmakers they have, they just create open shots. It's not even about luck with them. It's just they seem to will shots into existence with like Ben Myers on that top line, or as like a power play quarterback. They just create chances. Michigan State's penalty kill is going to get tested this weekend.
Oh, for sure. Well, as they always say, the best penalty killer is the goalie, right? And Jack LaFontaine, who I'm sure a lot of people know, who I'm sure everyone feels like he's been around for 42 years. And if you're thinking LaFontaine, how do I know that name? Well, he originally played 2 seasons at Michigan, left the program. Where did he went to a junior league type? I don't really remember. I hope I'm not completely butchering that, but and then went to Minnesota. He's a 3rd-round draft pick in 2016 from Carolina, and he was fantastic last year and a really good goalie, and the reason why they were such a good team. This year, he's taken a little bit of a step back. 2.76 goals per game and only an .898 save percentage. What have you seen from LaFontaine in the past, and how does it look compared to this year?
Yeah, it really is kind of shocking. I had heard the name, and I had watched a few Minnesota games this year, and I assumed his save percentage was better. One of the reasons is because I caught him. I watched the Minnesota Michigan game a couple weeks back where they won 5-1. Fontaine made 30 saves in that game. He was excellent. And then I looked up his stats. I'm like, he has a sub 900 save percentage. The goals against isn't terrible, but a sub 900 for a 3rd-round draft pick in college. I was pretty shocked. He's just he's had a lot of stinkers this year, which again is surprising because it's not really like when Drew DeRitter or Pierce Charleston have like a rough game, it can usually be attributed to defensive lapses or lack of offensive support. When LaFontaine struggles this year, it's kind of his fault. And like I said, it's kind of shocking based on where he was picked, on how long he's been in college. The thing that Michigan State has to keep in mind, though, is he still has that pedigree and he can still do that kind of stuff. He may not have the stats to show it this year, but like he did against Michigan, against a lethal offense, he has that ability to kind of come in and shut it down like he used to. So not great stats, but I don't want to count him out.
Yeah, and to me, I've watched a few of their games, probably about 3, and then I went and watched all of their kind of like condensed game type highlight, the 5-minute videos that they put out on Big Ten's YouTube page, and a lot of times in those games, I was like, how did he miss that? Like, these are bad, or he gives up a juicy rebound. And yeah, I was kind of thinking, last year when I watched this kid play, I mean, he was really damn good.
Yep.
So, hey, maybe they are meeting him at a good time, and he's maybe a little bit off this season, and who knows? It could factor in the outcome of a game, especially the way that the MSU has been able to play up to their opponents at times and keep the games close. I know that they got blown out by Michigan the first game, but that second game was a totally different story. If it comes down to a 1-goal game late in the third, I'm feeling pretty good still about their chances to come back, just because LaFontaine has not been as sharp as he has been in the past. Now, as we move on, this is a stat that I saw, and we talked about the offensive playmakers and kind of the offensive depth that Minnesota has, and it's proven here. Each team has surrendered 49 goals this year. Minnesota, however, has scored 61 to Michigan State's 48. To me, that's just saying, they have more offense. And if you watch their games and you see these players play together, it's pretty it's pretty obvious that they can create offense better than Michigan State does. And that's a little bit scary, but it just shows MSU's really going to have to be strong on the defensive side.
And Minnesota has that ability to make a game lopsided quick. Michigan State, for as improved as they are, they're just not at that level yet. They're not going to beat Michigan 5-1, barring some crazy stuff happening. Like, Minnesota has that ability to kind of just take over a game and hammer it. And I think that's what that stat right there that you pulled up shows, that Minnesota has that ability. They're that kind of program that if you get them and you're on a wrong night, you're going to get hammered.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a strong program. It always has been the past, however many years. They rarely have a streak of down years, maybe one year that's not as good as others, but just a strong program. And I guess we'll go into the keys to the game and the predictions for the weekend. So what does Michigan State have to do in order to win, and what is your prediction for both?
All right,
games?
So I've got a few keys. So number one, we're going to go with the least surprising one. It's going to be Drew DeRitter has to stand on his head. I think every Michigan State, anyone who's watched a lick of MSU hockey this year knows that if Michigan State wants to pull off a win against a team like Minnesota, it's going to be off the backs of Drew DeRitter. He's coming off a couple of excellent games. I think he made 35 saves against Western. I know he made 43 against Tech. 2 excellent starts. If Michigan State's going to win, it's going to be because he played well, or at least that's going to be a large part. Number 2, though, and this one scares me, but I think the defense is going to need to keep scoring. It's the reason it scares me is because it's hard to rely on defense to provide your offense, but MSU's defensemen this year have proven that they can kind of contribute more than the depth scores. In the Penn State series, half of MSU's goals were scored by defensemen. In the GLI, 3 out of the 4 goals were scored by defensemen for Michigan State. I mean, all 3 of them were from Gooch, but Dennis Asana and David and even the Krieger brothers are going to have to provide that offensive output, the depth that's kind of lacking in those lower lines. They're going to be the ones who have to come in and provide that.
Yeah, and I feel like I say this every single week, but they got to stay out of the box. And I'm going to continue to say it until they learn how to not take frustration penalties, stupid penalties. You know, it's the worst thing in the world is when they're taking these just immature, I'm mad, I'm going to go after and, you know, throw an extra check late, or I'm going to take a penalty right before the end of a period, or just stupid stuff like that. And a team like this, you cannot afford to do that because Michigan State's not going to climb back. As you mentioned, it would not be surprising if Minnesota scores. I mean, if you told me, hey, Friday night they came out hot and in the first 7 minutes had 3 goals, like, I wouldn't be surprised. You know what I mean? Like, they're that talented offensively and they can do that. You cannot give them any extra advantage. I understand there's going to be penalties. I just want to avoid those stupid penalties far away from the puck with, you know, a late check. They
just seem to be so poorly timed too. Like you mentioned, they just seem to be when the game is within reach or when it's tied. It's never like, it's never when we can afford to take one.
Yeah, it's, and I'm not going to name names, but there's certain players on this team.
We all know.
Yeah, they take penalties weekly, almost every single game, and if they can just eliminate that a little bit, but you know, on the same end, if they can get on the power play, you know, last year they had. I'm going to pull up last year's, and I put this on a video I did earlier in this season when I was recapping the first half. And what you're looking at is a bunch of stats. I don't expect, especially if you're listening on Spotify, you cannot see this, but last year in 27 games, Michigan State had 5 power play goals. That's it. I don't know the exact number that they have right now, but they had 12 at the break. They had how many in the GLI? 1 or 2?
I think 1.
Gucciardi's in the first game was a power play.
Yes.
So they're already at what, like 13 power play goals this year?
Yep, 13, 14, somewhere around there.
And it looks much better. You know, Lochran and Davidson are definitely helping out. Christoph Papp has been a better player. He's not lighting the lamp. He's not putting up a ton of points, but a more well-rounded player than he was last year. You know, if you can get on the power play, and I hate to say this because it always feels like such an underdog mentality, but sometimes with these games, the big difference is taking advantage of the special teams, especially when you're likely a less talented team. And like we mentioned, you know, LaFontaine has not been nearly as good as Drew DeRitter. If it comes down to the goalies, I love the chances. So why don't we work our way into the prediction? What do you have Friday night, a 6:30 start time, a little bit odd start time, but what is your prediction for Friday night? And then just go ahead and roll with your prediction for Saturday as well.
So I think MSU actually opens up Friday night with a win. Minnesota hasn't played a conference game since like December 4th, I think. They just had an exhibition against St. Thomas, I think yesterday or the day before. And I think as we speak, they have one against the U.S. Development Program. But they haven't really played in a real game in quite some time. I think MSU comes out and they kind of give them a punch in the face. I think it's going to be a close win, maybe like a 3-2, 4-2, something like that. But I think MSU kind of shocks them night one. Now the following night, I expect the ice to tilt the other way a bit. I think Minnesota's going to come out a little pissed off, a little angry that they kind of got showed up Friday night. So it's boring, but I'm going to go with a series split. MSU has shown for the past 4 series in a row, if you're counting the GLI, that they can split against really talented teams. And I think they pull it off again and kind of keep their hopes alive for getting a home berth in the tournament.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I don't want to do exactly what you do, but I'll go with, I want to see if I can get points. You have to get points this weekend. You cannot get sweat, but I mean, even if it's an overtime pointer, I don't know. You got to get points. But I'll go with, you know what? I'll go with a Michigan State sweep. And the
Let's
reason why, I'll
go.
tell you why,
Let's
is
go.
because I don't want to do what you're doing, and I also have yet to predict a Michigan State sweep this year. Can you imagine if they do, though? I mean,
Oh,
I don't necessarily think they will, but sometimes you just got to roll the dice and go with your gut with these. You know, I'm
they will
throwing everything on the
storm their
line.
way into the top 20 there because they're already they received 21 votes. They're just outside. If they pull off a sweep against a Minnesota team,
do you remember when Michigan State football beat Miami this year? Now, Miami turned out not to be the best team, but that was an on the road win.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a moment when everyone was kind of like, you know, I think this team's good, but they've got to go to Miami and play Miami, blah, blah, blah. And they won, and everyone's kind of like, wait up. Can we start, you know, believing in this team? And wait up. You know, all the players are saying, yeah, this is legit. Like, can you imagine what a sweep of Minnesota would do for this team? Now it's highly unlikely, but I'm just gonna try to speak it into existence here because it would. I really do think it could propel this team. Now I'm not saying they're gonna just dominate the second half or anything, but
it would do something for the exposure of the team too. I mean, even when I forget who, but Magic Johnson ended up tweeting about one of the MSU players the other week.
So Matt, those of you who are not familiar with Magic Johnson's Twitter presence, let me give you a quick overview of what it is. It is written at a 6th grade level, and it's extremely factual. It will simply be like, congrats to LeBron James on scoring 42, 8, and 7 tonight as the LA Lakers take down the Sacramento Kings 104-92. Like, at LeBron James. Like, it's so bizarre how he tweets, but it's gotten to the point where it's kind of become like an internet meme, just because of how like kind of goofy it is, I guess.
It's just the most like basic observations, but it just I don't know. It comes off as endearing because you know he actually is just trying to shine some light on the player, but it's just so funny, just the way he does it. Like you said, it's like a 6th grade level, and he's like, congrats to LeBron James for 42 points. That's his second win in 2 days. It's like,
and so he tweeted about Drew Ritter a few weeks back after like a shutout or something. I don't remember, a typical Drew Ritter start, really. And I just thought, like, dude, that a little, like, literally, how cool is that Magic Johnson is at least keeping tabs on MSU hockey. Like, you know, he's not watching, but who cares? Like, it's cool. And if I'm a recruit and I see Magic Johnson tweeting out my name, like, that's awesome. Yeah. Speaking of recruiting, I want to touch on this real quickly before we get out of here. Michigan State hockey. Now, recruiting's different in hockey than other sports. You recruit early. There's hardly any coverage. It's hard to follow. The ranking systems are not nearly as precise as football and basketball, even though time and time again, those ranking systems are proven to be flawed as well. Christian Kim committed to Michigan State. And if you all do not follow Jeremy Dewar, he's been on this podcast before. He is the guru of MSU commitment and any type of recruiting. He literally, like, if he were to delete his Twitter account, no one would know anything about it. Anything about the hockey recruitment world. So I'm literally looking at his tweet right now. I'm just going to read a couple things just so you know. He describes Christian Kim as a kid with silky hands, defined, great hockey sense, smooth skater, and under the radar gym for the 2005, yes, that should make everyone feel old, class. He goes on to say that neutral zone, which is kind of like the rivals or whatever, 247 or whatever, has him rated as a 3.75 star right now, which is typically MSU commits are around the 3.5 star or so, sometimes 3.75. And as he explained on a podcast, if you have not listened to that one, go back. A few weeks ago, Jeremy was on. It was an hour long, and he literally taught me so much about the recruitment process. It's incredible for those of you who have not heard that. these rankings are done, and then they may not even see the kid play again for an extremely long period of time, and then they come back, see him, and re-rank him. And he kind of insinuates, as he puts in parentheses, for now. So I think everyone's expecting him to get a bump. And if everyone's like, okay, well, like, let's hear something about him. Here's something. 39 games, 97 points. And Jeremy says the Michigan State comp for Kim would be Lewandowski with a higher ceiling. So, I mean, what people have to understand is this doesn't happen overnight. This isn't transfer portal. Well, it is kind of transfer portal stuff, but this isn't a Mel Tucker. Everyone's tuned into the program if you're in high school. Like, it takes a long time to flip a hockey program around. And to get like this for Coach Cole, I mean, who knows if it'll all turn out, or, you know, if, as we all know, a commitment is only a pledge until it's signed. So, but definitely a big get. Need a couple more players like this, but something for Michigan State hockey fans to be excited about for sure.
It's nice to know that they're still, even with the team struggling kind of offensively the past couple of seasons. I don't think it's necessarily because of Danton Cole, but just it seems to have been exemplified under Danton Cole. But the fact that offensive forwards are still coming to the school, I mean, that's just a great sign for where the program's heading to me.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, I don't remember who said this to me the first time I thought about it, but like Michigan State was playing last year and everyone was talking about, I'm talking about the football program, and everyone was talking about like, oh, what player would want to come here? It's like, all right, well, spin zone. If I'm really talented, I say, look what they need. They need a me in that offense, or they need a this. You know what I mean? So I mean, everyone loves to talk about recruiting, and everyone loves to talk about their ideas of what these kids are thinking, and it's so hard to predict. No one knows, you know. Everyone just loves to come up, like, I can come up with some type of a spin zone for each one of them. But well, Alex, we don't want to hold you any longer. Thank you so much for joining us. That was some fantastic information. You all can follow Alex on Twitter, as you see it there on the screen. I'm gonna tweet this out. Everyone as well. I've never actually said this, and I feel like you don't have any type of a podcast unless you say some variation of liking, subscribing, sharing. That's the one way that this can grow, is if people subscribe to it, listen to it, watch it. Just tell a friend's all I ask. And I make $0 off of this. So I just do this for the love of MSU hockey. So Alex, thank you so much. Any parting words?
No, man, thanks for having me. Super fun. Like he said, go check him out on Twitter. I love that there's finally like a place where fans can congregate for MSU hockey. Yeah. I wish I would have had that when I was in high school. So go follow it. And yeah, follow me on Twitter if you want MSU and Red Wings news.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks so much, and go green.
Go White.